Hey everyone, welcome to Jake's Adventure Garage. I'm Jake, and today we're going to talk about the Radiomaster MT12, so stay tuned. Hey everyone, welcome back. As I said, my name is Jake, and today we're going to have a quick video on the Radiomaster MT12. Now, I'm sure there's a lot of videos and a lot of people talking about this radio all over the place because it is an awesome radio. I wanted to do a quick overview now that I've been using it for the last 6 months or better, talk about some things I like, some things I don't like, and then show you the basics. So if you don't want to watch my opinion, that's fine. You can fast forward to some of the basic tasks for the radio. It is a learning curve, but once you figure out the menus, it's relatively simple. There's still a lot of things that this radio does that even I am not aware of in terms of programmability. Let's do a quick overview on the radio itself. So this radio comes in two different types. You can get the ELRS version, which is a open source protocol, or you can get the 4-in-1 version. The ELRS version, again, is an open source protocol, and you can use any ELRS receiver with the radio. That is the version that I have, is the ELRS. All ELRS is a different frequency, or potentially even the same frequency with a different scramble mode, we'll say, different like encryption than other radios. So like Futaba or FlySky or Spectrum or Pick Your Radio. Most of them are now utilizing frequencies that are more proprietary in terms of communication to eliminate the ability for radios like Radiomaster's MT12 to utilize their receivers. They essentially want to force you to use their products so that way you don't just buy the radio, but you have to buy their receivers as well. And instead of paying $10 for a receiver, you're paying $40 to $80 for a receiver. The other model is called the 4-in-1 model, and it can control, I think, 80 or more different manufacturers' receivers. So older Traxxas, older FlySky, things of that nature. Not the newer 2-in-1 stuff from like Spectrum. Some of it can control, some of it can't. It really just depends on where the development is in terms of communicating with those receivers. They are two different radios. I think the base price is around $150. It might have gone up to $175. But the cool thing about these radios is you can buy every single part for this radio on the Radiomaster website. So the only downside is these are obviously produced in China, which if you're a American, you know, the new tariffs and things of that nature kind of increase the price. I don't think that there is a limit on the channels as long as you can program it, but out of the box, I believe it's a 32-channel radio. And the ELRS version has a bunch of different receivers. So like here's an example 5-channel receiver with an antenna. You can get the same receiver without the antenna. It has a external battery. So you can see this red wire here, it plugs in and it has an external battery monitor. So you're getting the Beck voltage and the actual battery voltage. Most receivers only get the Beck voltage, and if you're running higher than 2S and your Beck voltage is lower than 2S, you're not ever going to know the actual voltage of the battery. Where this becomes a huge thing is if you're racing or flying or you're in a boat. So say you have an aircraft or a watercraft or whatever the case is, and you have a cell that dies all of a sudden. Well, you don't really know that unless you have something monitoring the battery, which this can do. The ELRS and the 4-in-1 versions are completely separate. You cannot buy a radio with both radios built in, which kind of sucks. I think that they should have a third version of this with both sets of frequencies in it. Now, what you can do is you can purchase these top hats, like this top hat here. This is a 4-in-1 module top hat, whatever you want to call it, if you will. And it actually sits right on top of the radio, just like this. So now I have a 4-in-1 module for my ELRS radio. So that's an option. You can buy one or the other and then add that module later. I think these are like between $50 and $75. The prices keep changing, all of the economic stuff happening, which we're not going to get into. But you can see right here it says 4-in-1 on it. Yeah, a little overview on the radio. It has potentiometers. It has a bunch of different trims. Here you have this potentiometer as well. There's a bunch of switches you can add. So down here on the radio, you can add or remove this section, and you can put like a joystick switch here. You can put these two little switches. You could probably make your own custom stuff and throw it in there. The main selling point of Radiomaster is it runs on an open source platform. So if you wanted to make changes to how your radio works and you're efficient at coding and things of that nature, then you can absolutely do whatever you want with it. I mean, there's a repository on GitHub that you can download. You can do different tuning and tweaking and modifying of that source code, and then add it to your radio. So you could have all kinds of really cool features without having to jailbreak your radio or do anything crazy, because the code is already there and the ability is already there, which makes this a huge selling point. Because as the community starts to adopt it more and more, you'll see a lot more cool things that come with it. A primary example here is that this radio actually has the ability to do a built-in time lapse for the throttle. So I can hold the throttle down for my speed car, and I can set it from 0 to 1.5 minutes to go from 0% throttle to 100% throttle. So I don't actually have to try and squeeze the throttle at a slow rate. I can have it accelerate however fast I want, from 0 seconds to, I think it's like 90 seconds maybe. There's all kinds of different features and capabilities with it. So awesome radio. I've really liked it. As a matter of fact, I have, I think, between 20 and 30 receivers for it now, and I'm slowly migrating all of my trucks over. It's just easier for me. One of the big selling points for this radio, outside of the ability to do long distance speed runs without having to have dedicated antennas, your antenna does turn here, so you get better range. But I've had this radio with a receiver with an antenna, with the antenna in the air, and I've been able to control a car up to 1 mile away. The only downside I would say is there's no built-in gyro. So I'm not sure that any of these receivers have gyros on them, so you would have to use something, some dedicated gyro or external third-party gyro when you need to use it. I don't use gyros for anything, so it's not really a concern for me, but for those of you that do, just know that, to my knowledge, there's not a gyro built into any of the receivers. You can get a variety of different receivers, like this one here. So this one would be more of a flight receiver, where you have a 4-channel, but it's super small, super lightweight. This specific one is actually a Futaba frequency, I believe, the R series. So it will not work with your ELRS radios, but they do have an ELRS version. You can buy that. I know they also have smaller receivers, micro-sized receivers. So depending on your application, they have pretty much a variety of different sizes, channels, things of that nature, and they probably have what you want. The other really cool thing about these receivers is that if you apply power to it, and you don't have a radio signal to this receiver within 30 seconds, it automatically starts Wi-Fi, and you can connect to it. So you can connect to the receiver via Wi-Fi and change things. So like, for example, channel 5 on these receivers is only ever going to be Boolean, true or false, on or off. And so you can go in there and make channel 5 channel 6 or channel 8 or channel 22. It doesn't really matter, because a radio application, channel 5 is typically for aircraft to signal distress or yes or no, on or off. These are some of the things that I've learned along the way. So you can go in here and change that via Wi-Fi. It's really, really cool. The other cool thing is say I had 2 5-channel receivers and I needed to use 8 channels. I can't use 8 channels on a 5-channel, so what I can do is I can simply just bridge these 2 receivers together and connect to Wi-Fi on one of them and change channel 1 to channel 8 or channel 2 to channel 9, whatever the case is, and then it'll automatically bridge these 2 receivers together. You don't have to do anything special, and then you can control them both via your radio. So it's really cool. You can do like daisy chaining of the receivers. I'm sure other manufacturers allow that as well, but I've never really needed to do that. And the one time that I did need to do it, I noticed that it's just that easy. So with that being said, some things that I really like about the radio: I like its size, I like its weight. I really like the fact that it has this potentiometer right here, because as you can see, This is what I use for 4-wheel steer. I love the adjustability on it. So for example, I can set, if you see this potentiometer, it goes all the way one way or the other. So in the software, you can set it to where maybe this is 100% throw one way and this is 100% throw the other. So instead of having to go all the way one way or the other, you can tune it to wherever your thumb likes to go. So like right there, I want it to be 100%. And right there, I want it to be 100%. I mean, and that's just an example, right? The tunability of the radio is really a limit of your imagination. If you can think it, then you can probably do it. It's a great radio. Everything works or functions as it should. And, I'd highly recommend it. Now, I'm going to talk about some things that I don't like. And it sounds like this is a very long list, but it's really not. I'm obviously using the radio. I'm moving all of my trucks to it. And so I just want everyone to be aware of the quirks that come with this radio. So the first quirk is initially you almost need a college degree on the radio to run it, because the way that it was programmed initially is very different than a lot of the other radios out there, right? It makes logical sense once you step back and think about it, but it is not the same in terms of how the easeability of programming other radios are versus this one. There's a lot of ways to skin a cat on this radio, and it's not just one way like most other radios, and so it makes it overwhelming at first. And so you have to really persevere through that learning curve to get to the end result. The next downside is the speed at which this transmits. So it's a very fast radio. I would say that it is not the fastest radio. Comparing the MT12 to something like my Noble, my FlySky Noble. My FlySky Noble actually has way faster steering. So when I do this, the tires or wheels on my trucks, they jiggle, right? They move with this. This radio with ELRS does not really do that. You can get the wheels to move really fast, but it doesn't actually follow. It doesn't actually follow this. So you can hear it go. It's kind of like bouncing from the spring. The wheels don't really do that, right? They do on my Noble, they don't on this one. So I don't know what the discrepancy is there, but it is there, right? It's definitely either not sending all of the actions of my radio to my receiver, or it's sending them all and the receiver is just processing them so fast that it's not actually converting that to an output for my servo. I'm not sure. That would be a good test for a later video. I would say that is one of the other downsides. So if you're, max effort racing, on-road, off-road, things like that, depending on how fast you need your steering, this may or may not be the radio for you. I would say the last downside for me is, since everything is on the cheaper side, some of the buttons and the potentiometers are not necessarily 100% accurate. So for example, like you can see there's a dead spot here where center should be. However, center on the radio is not there. And so where this becomes a bigger problem is with the throttle. So if the throttle is, we'll say, one trim positive or one trim negative, and you try and set it to 0 on the screen, certain ESCs aren't going to like that. Like your Castle ESC, for example, isn't going to like starting up with the radio set at 0 when it's not really at 0, right? And so it can be confusing, and it can be a painful process at sometimes for different things, because you think you have everything set up the way it should be, and it's not. You have to understand that this is a cheaper radio, the parts in it are cheaper, and so you just have instances where it's just not going to be 100% accurate on the screen, and I live with it. It doesn't bother me. It may bother you, so if that does bother you, just know that going into the radio, these are some of the things that you could run into. With that being said, done with the overview, let's jump into some of the basic programmability of the radio. Alright, so getting the camera turned around, you have 7, really 8 buttons up front here. You have the 3 side buttons, the power button, and you have your scroll wheel, which is also a button. And this is kind of a double-edged sword. I would say it's not something that I like or don't like, but it has the potential to be a pain for everyone involved. So I'll talk about that more in a minute. So in order to power on the radio, you have to hold the power button, and you see on the screen there's 4 dots. Once those 4 dots flash fully, you will start. So this is nice to prevent you from actually accidentally clicking the button and it starting or turning on and wasting your battery. So you can see here we have the main display, which I just turned it here. We have the model name, so Jeep XJ in this instance. We have the battery voltage, and then we have a bunch of different trims for our different channels. You can see as we turn the wheel here, this trim is at -46 for the steering, and as I turn it from one direction to the other, you can see it goes to 111 to the right and -144 to the left. So that's where the endpoints are set specifically for this vehicle. Again, you have these buttons here. You have the system button. If you have the ELRS version and you hold this system button, this is how you program it. You have your different tools here. You have your express, long range, whatever S is. I have no idea. I probably should have looked that up. You have a game breakout, and you have the TBS light agent. I don't actually utilize 2 and 3. I have no idea what those are for. So yeah. Anyway, in this instance, Express LRS, you set your packet rate here. So for our example, we're using 333 Hertz, full frequency, using the standard telemetry ratio, which you can turn that off if you don't want telemetry. We're using a switch mode of 8 channel and some other information. So you would scroll down here when you go to bind your receiver, and how you bind your receiver is you simply apply power 3 times. So you apply power, unplug it, apply power, unplug it, apply power, unplug it, apply power, and it is in bind mode. So once your receiver is in bind mode, you simply go here and you click bind, and it will bind. Now obviously we're not going to be able to bind anything because we don't have a receiver. And then when you're done with that, you just simply hit the return button, the RTN, and it will go back to your home screen. The next buttons is the page buttons, and this will scroll through the different displays that you can have on your radio. And again, these are programmable, so if you have the ability to do any kind of programming, you can go in and you can make your own displays. And then you have your telemetry button. I don't really use this a lot except for speed running, and I only use it for speed running to determine the voltage of the actual battery packs themselves. So like in this instance, you can see our radio battery is 8.2, and then you would have the RX battery, which is your actual battery voltage here. So I'm sure there's a lot more things that you can do with this, especially if you're doing water or aircraft, but for what I use it for, I really only use it for speed running and not really the crawling or bashing side of things. The other button, and this is really where all of your features and accessibilities are going to be, is right here in model. So you click your model and you can see we have the ability to set 60 different models in here. I don't know if that is a hard limitation or a programmable limitation, so you could potentially add more models if you wanted. And this is really where you start to get into the programmability of the radio. The first step should be, if you already have a model in here, you want to go into the model menu and either select a new model or copy an existing model over for ease of use. But if you have Model 1 programmed already, you obviously don't want to program another car on Model 1. You want to do it on Model 2, 3, 4, whatever. So this is really where this scroll button becomes potentially dangerous, because it's also a button, right? I would prefer this to be only a scroll wheel and have the select or enter button be on a different button, because I have made many mistakes by accidentally scrolling and pressing at the same time. You can select this model, meaning you can make your radio utilize it and control that model. You can back it up, you can copy it, you can move it, and you can delete it. Now let's say I want to select it. I accidentally scroll to delete and hit enter, right? And now I've accidentally deleted my model. You have to be very cautious when using the scroll wheel, because otherwise you will potentially make mistakes. So here we are, selected A1, and again, we'll say I want to make a new model. I'll simply just copy this model, and I scroll down to the next one, so like 17 here. So I copied it, now let's select it. model has been selected, and you'll know that because that star or asterisk is next to the model. And from here you can't really do anything. So this is where your page functions come in. So your first menu to the right is going to be your setup menu. So you have the ability to set the model name here. You can set the timers. I don't really use those for anything. You can set the limits. You can show the trims. If you're using the 4-in-1 top hat, you'll actually bind the model in this instance. So you can see we have internal radio frequency. Right now it's set to CRSF. That is the LRS frequency. And we have the external radio frequency off. Now, if I wanted to use a 4-in-1 module or a Traxxas receiver or a FlySky receiver or whatever, I would turn the internal radio off here. So I would set this to off, and I would turn the external mode on to whatever mode it is. So like right here, we have the multi-mode, type FlySky, and you can get this information on their website. They have great documentation. So you can go on there and see what your receiver translates to, or you can just test it out, try it, right? So there are many different versions. I think there's 4 different options here for FlySky. And you have standard, 9x9, 6x6, and 912, and CX20. I would say most stuff is probably standard. There's also 2 different, no, there's not. So here's all of the different models. You can scroll through there and check them out, and then try it out. So we're just going to stay on FlySky because we're not actually going to connect anything. We can have a channel range from 1 to 16, and then this is where you would bind the receiver. So you would put whatever receiver it is into bind mode, and you would select this button and bind it. There's some other stuff on this menu that I don't mess with, so I'm just going to pass it. So that's menu number 1. You can see here we're on setup number 2 of 11. We scroll over to menu 3, and you see we have drive modes. I'm not really going to discuss these. This was a logical order of the menus for whoever created this software. It's not necessarily your logical order. So drive modes is probably not something that you're going to mess with right out of the gate, so we'll keep going right to item number 4. And this is where you select your inputs. Now, you need to know that this radio does not associate inputs with outputs and channels. So like you can see here, we have a steering input for the top one. So if we hold our scroll button and we hit edit, you can see everything about it. So the source for this is the steering, so this source here. We could change this source by simply using another button. So instead of using the steering source, we're using the S1 potentiometer. So you can see how this potentiometer here is off. So it's at 0, but it's actually at negative 10.5 on the thing. So moving it to 0, we're not actually in the sweet spot or the dead spot of the potentiometer. So that's kind of what I was talking about, it being a negative. It's not that big a deal. So we have it on steering. You can set the source to whatever you want, and then the weight of that source, you can set it at 100 to a negative 100. You can set the offset. You can set the curve, and you can make this whatever you want. You can make this a difference, you can make it exponential, you can make it a function, or you can make it custom. It's very programmable, if you will. You have different modes. Most of this stuff I don't really adjust. I will simply set the source and potentially the offset. So instead of using your trim buttons for steering, for example, you simply just, and see, and there's that accidental move, right? I accidentally moved it up and pressed. But you can set the offset here to whatever you want instead of having to use your trim buttons. So your trim could be 0, and you just simply change the offset of that channel to make your wheels straight. So those are inputs, very, very easy, and that's really what you do, is you set the physical hardware to the virtual input. So IST is going to be steering because it says so right here. So the next menu, menu 5 out of 11, is going to be your mixes. You can set up a bunch of different things here. So this is going to be the source of steering. And again, I can make this a source of anything I want. And you can again do the weight, you can do the offset, you can do different modes, you can do warnings, you can do multiplexing, you can delay up and down. This is delay and slow is how you would do the throttle delay. So for example, if you wanted to turn hard right and delay that, or slowly increase that turn to the right instead of an immediate turn, this is where you would do that. So you wouldn't really use this for much if you're just using throttle and steering, because there's really no reason to create a mix. In this specific example, this profile is set up for my four-wheel steer buggy. It has dig and it has four-wheel steering. You can see on channel 3 here we have this 500 number. The 500 number is the weight. So that is how you set the distance of travel. At this 500 number, moving just this tiny bit is 100% lock one way, and moving this tiny bit is 100% lock the other way. Setting it to 400 would be a little further either way. Setting it to 300 would be even further, and so on and so forth. So this is where you would adjust that. Moving to menu 6, this is going to be the easiest menu for most people out there because it's the output section. So here you're actually taking your physical channels and you're converting them to your outputs. You can see your directional arrow over here, whether the channel is reversed or not. So again, let's hold the scroll button and hit edit. The subtrim in this instance is -7.3. The minimum distance, or channel left, is -46. Channel right is 36. We have the direction inverted, meaning that it's reversed. And then you can set some other stuff here, which I typically don't do. This is channel 1. Obviously, channel 2 is going to be for your throttle. Channel 1 is typically your steering servo. Channel 2 is typically your throttle, and then the other channels are on you. So here you can see we have our offset column, we have our left column, and then right column, and then if it's reversed or not. These other menu functions are not something that I utilize, so I'm not going to go into those. So that's the output menu for menu number 6. Menu number 7 is your curves. And this is where you would do custom curves. So you would come in here to configure the curve for like speed running, for example, where you set the throttle at a delay. And again, I'm not going to cover that because that's just one small feature out of many. There are many videos on how to do that. Menu number 8 is going to be logical switches. So this is like if-then statements. So if you're holding the throttle and you turn right, do this. Or if you're holding the throttle and turn left, do this. Or if this switch is engaged and you're holding the throttle and you're turning right, do this. Again, I don't utilize this menu much, so I will go ahead and breeze right by it. Now, menu number 9 is special functions. This will essentially do different things, like you can see play track start when it starts up, or utilizes LO1, not LO1, which is signifies by the exclamation point. You're going to play soundtrack stop. So here's where you can actually play track to tell you that there's a low battery based off of your functions. Menu number 10 is telemetry. I've never touched this menu, so we're going to go right on past it. And then menu number 11 is display. This is where you can configure different screens and different displays. So like here we have screen 1 shows numbers of the receiver battery, the TSB, the radio battery, the transmit power, things of that nature. That is that menu. And then when you hit right again, you go back to menu number 1. And you do it all over again. So kind of to recap here, once you pair your receiver, whether it's in the setup menu or the system menu for ELRS and in the setup menu for 4-in-1, you're going to want to set the model name. I turn off all the timers because they're annoying. And then you're really just going to move into your inputs. Make sure the input is what you want. And then from there, you're going to scroll over to outputs and set your subtrims, your endpoints, things of that nature, your direction. And that's really as far as most people are going to go. That is really the gist of it. It seems way more complicated than it is. I know I have fixed many radios where people have made mistakes by just solely using the inputs and then also mixing inputs. And there are many ways to not do things and to do things. And so that's kind of an overview of how to do them. So there it is, folks. The Radiomaster MT12 become my favorite radio to use for the price point and the abundance of features. There's buttons and stuff everywhere. You can make different buttons do different things. I mean, it's just, sky's the limit, like I said. So the other really great point about the ELRS stuff is the receivers. If you have the 4-in-1, you can pretty much buy the cheapest receiver that's supported and utilize that, and maybe that becomes popular, you move to another cheap receiver. Or if you buy the ELRS version, any ELRS receiver will work with it because the protocol is the same. So, you know, if the Radiomaster $25 5-channel receivers are too much, you can get on Amazon and get receivers for between $10 and $20. Much more palatable than $40 to $80. So for example, when I first bought my Noble, I was able to buy, I believe, 20 receivers for it for $10 a receiver from AliExpress. Within a matter of 6 months, those receivers went from $10 to $20. Instead of spending $200, I would have had to spend $400. And it just spirals out of control because the manufacturer knows they have something of value and it's based off of supply and demand. So you simply just find something else that doesn't have the demand and you supply your stuff. Is it the best radio out there? Probably not. Is it the worst radio out there? Again, probably not. Is it for everyone? That's for you to decide. I think that it works really well for me. The other really cool thing is you can export your stuff, all of your models, and import it into another radio. You can back it up. I know most radios out there have these same features, or most advanced high-price radios out there have these features, but you're going to be spending a lot more than $150 to $175 on those radios. At the end of the day, it really just depends on what you want. Would I recommend Radiomaster to everyone? Probably not. I am a big fan of it personally, but I know some people like simplicity. I like this radios because you're not locked into anything. It is available to everyone and is you know, it's really up to us as a community to continue to adopt and support projects like the open source project to make sure that we have the ability to use something different, prevent us from being locked into a specific brand or whatever the case is. Anyway, I'm gonna stop babbling. I hope you guys found this helpful. Really appreciate everyone for making it this far. Huge shout out to the Jake's Adventure Garage Club members, and as always, we hope you have a great day.